Okay, so good evening, good afternoon to everyone here, and welcome to this parallel session of the Guiding Seed Sector Transformation in Africa. And this session is on developing nascent forage seed sector in East Africa. And today we have Tom Van Morik from Kit Walter Tropical Institute, and he will be the main moderator and the facilitator for this session. And we have Ben Lukuyu from the International Livestock Research Institute. We have Mona Dhamankar from Kit Royals Tropical Institute again, Charles from Advantage Crops Limited, and Michael Peters from the Alliance of Biodiversity and SEAT. So I will give the floor to Tom. Tom, you can start facilitating this. And just a word of note, I will be handling the slides, so please let me know when you want me to advance the slides.
Yes, thank you very much, Arnab.
Yeah.
So welcome everyone to this special session on forage seed sector development in East Africa. We are very happy to talk about non-food crop for a change, but that is still very essential to the food system and sustainable and agroecological intensification of our farming and food systems. So this session will present early findings and experiences from a project called Feed and Forage Seed Business Models to support further professionalization of the dairy sector in Kenya and Uganda. And we want to link this to wider issues in the East African forage sector. Next slide, please. So the project is implemented with a consortium of KIT, its CGR partners, the Alliance Biodiversity SEAT and SEAT, ILRI, NALIRI, which is a national research institution in Uganda, as well as private seed companies Barenbrug and Advantage Crops Limited. Next slide, please. So why do we think it's important to talk about forage seed businesses? Well, currently there's really a constraint in the dairy sector, and that's related to feed. Feed is a very important element of dairy production, and this really is at the moment very suboptimal. So there are promising species and varieties of forage crops, but these are underutilized due to a poor functioning seed system. And so the project that I just talked about aims to analyze the forage seed sector functioning, constraints and opportunities, identify, implement, and assess business models for commercially viable forage seed production of promising and demanded varieties and species, test forage seed promotion marketing strategies, and pilot seed quality assurance mechanisms. Next slide, please. So in this session, we'll be talking mostly about the seed sector assessments that we've done and promotion strategies. And then later we'll learn about the experience from our private sector partners, Advanced Crops Limited, and we'll hear from Michael Peters about the wider picture and scaling forage seed varieties by linking key actors in East Africa. So with that, I'd like to hand the microphone over to Ben Lukuyu, who will present the seed sector assessment. Ben, you're welcome.
So thank you, Tom, and I'll be presenting some early results on the seed sector development in East Africa. And next slide, please. We started off by understanding the farming systems of both Kenya and Uganda, where we are conducting this work. We did a survey using the gendered feed assessment tool to understand the production livestock production systems and other agricultural issues in the two countries. We also did a forage seed business survey to understand various forage seed business models that are currently being used in the two countries. And we also had a rapid survey of the actors in the forage seed systems in both Kenya and Uganda. And in my presentation, I'll give you highlights of the key findings from those three surveys that we have conducted over the past year or so. Now, the farming systems are basically mixed crop livestock systems, and they range from improved intensive systems where farmers have small pieces of land and they farm crops and keep dairy cows at the same time. And we also have on the extreme end, the extensive systems that are developed, large farms, paddocks, improved breeds. And we also have another subset of farmers who are operating in the traditional extensive systems, which are largely improved, and they keep local cattle. So in one of the key things we have found out is the adoption of improved forage is still low. And these are insights that we got from all these studies, and I will be touching a bit on that in my next slide. Next slide, please. So when it comes to adoption of forages from these results in this table, I want to highlight three key things. The first point I want to highlight is that the adoption of forages, both cultivated and the ones grown by farmers, are relatively higher in Kenya, particularly farmers who are growing ranging between 77 and 82%. A big contrast for Uganda as well, where we have a relatively small number of farmers who have adopted improved forages ranging from 25 to 26%. The other key finding we found out is the absence of legumes in Kenya. Very few, actually none of the farmers surveyed grows forages, and few of the farmers, as you see in Uganda, not more than 25% growing forages as well as fodder trees. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the acquisition of planting materials, and there are two messages that are presented here. First of all, the vegetative materials, mainly from Napier grass, are mainly used by farmers, the transfer of farmer to farmer material, and they are prominent in Kenya rather than Uganda. We have other list of forages used by farmers, as you can see, and the acquiring of planting material remains relatively low. This is data for the past 12 months that we did the study. Next slide, please. So forage use, as I said, limited knowledge. The other constraint is limited knowledge on the use of improved forage. And there is need to invest, therefore, in extension of the improved forage, particularly using integrated ICT materials. Lack of clear regulatory framework is another big problem with constraints in the forage seed certification system. And as I said, the demand relatively remains low, and there is mainly used through informal systems. Next slide, please. So access to planting material, as I said, most farmers use vegetative material. A big share of the forage seed is traded through the informal seed sector, characterized by lack of quality standards in the seed and the high cost of certified forage seed, which limits farmers from buying the seed and therefore low intake. And there is an untapped agribusiness opportunity in forage and also the forage seed production, which can be exploited, and where women and youth have potential to play a very big role in these forage seed businesses in both Kenya and Uganda. Next slide, please. I think that is all. I will leave it there and I'll be happy to answer any questions that will come.
Thank you, Ben. We hope that people will use the opportunity of the chat system to type in their questions. I will try to keep up with them, and we'll try to discuss them after the presentations. So then I'd like to hand over the word to Mona Damanka, who will explain what we have done in terms of demand creation for forage seeds. As we've seen that there's a lack of awareness and there's little demand, we want to find out how we can create that demand. Mona, please go ahead. You're welcome.
Yep. Thank you, Tom. Can I have my slide, please? Yes, I'll be telling you briefly a bit about our research question linked to promoting forage seed varieties and how do we create demand using the communication channels which are conventionally used for extension. Next slide, please. So we essentially looked at 3 different channels depending on the intensity of use. So we started with extensive, which is the mass media radio programs, then the semi-intensive consisting of field days, and then intensive, which is a kind of our own adaptation of the farmer field school approach. And the idea was that each event would have a subset of the earlier event. So from the radio, people would generate interest and then come to the field day. From field day, they would opt for a farmer field school participation. And we've also designed focus group discussions at the end of it to assess the effects of these different channels on the farmer's knowledge, attitude, and practice towards improved forage practices. Next slide, please. This is just a quick sort of summary of what we mean by the 3 channels in terms of types of communication. I think it's obvious that the radio programs offer very limited personal interaction, although we had a call-in facility where people could actually interact with the experts. Semi-intensive field days were like any other field day where one-to-many farmers information was shared. And of course, farmer field school are very high level of interaction, mostly without media, on the farm and person to person. Of course, all this was affected by COVID, but we started before COVID, so some of it has already happened. Aims of the campaigns were different. Yes, we wanted to create interest first, then create some kind of demand, and then get people to actually learn and network and practice what they learned. Extension agents obviously had different roles in the 3 channels, and the roles of the farmers also were different, obviously, because radio programs, they don't really expect the information, but they get it. In field days, they seek advice, but again, maybe not everybody gets a chance. And then, of course, they're active learners when it comes to farmer field schools. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick sort of idea of what we did in the radio programs. We did messages like a cow is a factory. It was more colloquial, more commonsensical, just to generate some interest. So in both countries that we ran these radio programs, we used local languages for the messages. We had it sort of coinciding with the plantation season. The messages was essentially creating an interest, but also sort of reinforcing the need for improved forage cultivation for better milk and therefore a better milk market. We try to also sort of put them around the local programs that already existed. And in terms of outreach, yes, radios have a much larger outreach. So you see the numbers there that we even crossed the borders as far as the outreach was concerned. Next slide, please. The semi-intensive, like I said, field days was more like a one-to-many. It was a planned event where farmers came by invitation. And we've done a couple of field days in Kenya. We've done some in Uganda. Women farmers also attended because they're very closely linked to animal feeding. The information leaflets that we distributed, we created them in such a way that they would give information about the different varieties that we were talking about. We also at times distributed some small samples, but the idea was to encourage them to buy these. So there were private seed companies who also had their stalls there to make seed available. A lot of publicity was given just so that we could make it more known in the area. There were demos, and not just linked to forage seeds, but also demos linked to forage preservation. So we had silage making there. We had the demo plots shown. So it's more like a whole sort of comprehensive event where farmers discuss all aspects of forage production. Next slide, please. Coming to the intensive forage seed farmer field schools, it's quite a mouthful, but the idea was that we wanted to really take farmers through the whole sort of practices of cultivating improved forages. So there were demo plots that we used. Most of these demo plots were linked to the cooperatives because forage cannot be sort of promoted in isolation. It has to go with the milk market. So we have demo plots sort of adjacent to the cooperatives, and the sessions were also coinciding with the plantation season. About 16 to 20 farmers, more intensive, of which we tried to get 50% women farmers. And the turnout has been good. The master trainers came from the local organizations that are in our consortium, Naliri in Uganda and Siat in Kenya. And then we trained facilitators first, mostly extension agents and lead farmers affiliated to the dairy cooperatives. And again, the focus there was the importance and use of improved seed and forage production. I think the whole emphasis was on seed because this is a seed promotion project, but you cannot really isolate seed from the rest of forage production or forage management aspects as well. So it was a kind of a combination. And of course, these are not just technical sessions. In course of the sessions, there is also conversations on what are the farmers' motivations, what are their decision-making criteria, and what makes them want to invest in improved forages. So this, we've got a few lessons that we would like to share. Next slide, please. And like Tom said, we are still in the process of, the research is not done yet. So we do have some preliminary observations. Some very basics in terms of when we run promotion campaigns, we really need to know what our resources are, because radio programs, though the outreach is really far and wide, they do tend to become very expensive and therefore cannot be run throughout the year. We also learned that radio programs are fairly rigid in their format. So trying to fit in what we really want becomes a challenge. Like I mentioned, COVID-19 definitely affected attendance. So we really need to look for more alternatives, which could be maybe ICT solutions, but we haven't really gone there. The face-to-face events do provide a lot of opportunity for farmers to farmer exchange informally. And again, a key learning has been that seed companies ought to be there in the field days, because when you generate interest, if seed is not available, then the demand can be affected. And of course, it has to be timely as well. It has to coincide with the seasons. Otherwise, the interest generated cannot be sustained and really sort of translated into the next level of cultivation and feeding the animals. Promotional activities have to coordinate, so therefore you need multiple actors. It's not just the private seed suppliers and multipliers, but anyone who's sort of involved in supplying the seed. Cooperatives ought to be there, extension agents, and it's like it's a multi-stakeholder activity. It's not just one particular group of actors. And the experience has been good. We have a lot of learnings. There's been a few shortcomings that already have come to mind. But yeah, we keep trying as we go along. We still have one season in hand, so we might be making some changes as we go ahead. I think that's my presentation. Next slide, please. Thank you. Tom? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mona. Very interesting to see the different approaches that are being used to create demand. I think we have to make clear to the audience that it really is a nascent seed sector. It is not yet an established seed sector that we are dealing with. As we have seen from the community surveys, the current use of improved varieties of forages is still very low. Most of it is actually Napier grass, so sort of a generally used variety across Kenya and Uganda. And so there's really a need to make this, to grow this market, so to speak. And I think the session that follows on this, the panel session, really links very neatly to what Mona was talking about, because we're now going to talk with Charles Wasonga of Advantage Crops Limited, who's a seed company based in Kenya, and who has been involved with us as a consortium member, trying to promote seeds and make a business out of this sector. And also we want to talk to Michael Peters from the Alliance of Biodiversity and SIAT, who has some wider experiences with scaling improved forage seed in East Africa, not only in Kenya and Uganda, but throughout the region. So I think I'd like to start with Charles, and I'd like to give you this question to start your intervention. So how can demand be created for quality seed of improved forage seed varieties? And how can we make sure that the demand created is satisfied appropriately? And so I'd like to hear from you, from your point of view as a private seed company, what are you doing to promote demand, and what is your experience with that? Charles, go ahead, you're welcome to make your intervention.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thank you for everyone for attending this session. As Thomas mentioned, I work for a seed company based in Kenya called Advantage Crops Limited, and we have participated in this project as a partner. And as a private sector company, we have especially been motivated to consider investing in the commercialization of forage seeds in the East Africa region, starting initially with Kenya. And the issues that have been mentioned by the previous speakers of the need for forages and feeds to improve productivity of dairy and livestock in the region remains a key motivating factor for us as a company to invest in this. And then that has been coupled by the fact that there has been lack of better, more nutritious and more productive forage varieties that can indeed be used to improve productivity, and especially varieties that are adapted to the challenging production environments, some of which are characterized by climatic challenges such as drought. So in moving into this sector, we have used various ways to actually promote different forage varieties, but especially the improved varieties of the brachyrias, by way of actually working together with farmers, farmer groups, because in the region, if you consider a country like Kenya, you have farmers organized into groups, cooperatives, and so we have taken advantage of this situation to actually engage with these farmers and sensitize them about these varieties, showing them how they look like by planting demonstrations within their localities, and training them on how to utilize them and get the most out of them in terms of productivity. And we have seen that we have succeeded with getting that going, and part of our success with with really moving these forages, now making farmers to consider taking up these forages, has also taken advantage of the fact that within a country like Kenya, you have established seed distributors and who are licensed to sell certified seed. So we have partnered with some of these seed sellers. We call them agro dealers here, and they are using this. We are using this to actually avail the seed to the farmers who, after seeing at the demonstration sites and during the training events, are able to go back to the seed sellers at their shops to get this seed. So it's a mix of things, and then we operate within an environment. For example, in Kenya, where you have a plant health regulator called the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, who ensures that the components in relation to seed quality, that farmers get access to quality seed, is adhered to. So this ranges from the certifications we get with the seed that we deliver to farmers, and also even the people who eventually give out this seed to farmers in terms of reselling it to them, that is the agro dealers. So, Tom, if
Yes.
you will allow me to continue, then I could say that it is not all that rosy in terms of really getting this to be taken up by farmers, so that we make serious business sense out of it. There are a few challenges that we encounter on the way, and some of these include the process, for example, by which you even get a variety registered and released for now the commercialization side of things. So that process is usually complex and expensive. Sometimes you have a situation where you are introducing a forage crop, and even in the protocols that are established by the regulator, you do not really have clear protocols on how it will be tested so that it is approved. But then again, working together, then we are able to put together protocols that are used to test and then eventually get the varieties to be released. And then we are targeting to work not only in Kenya, but to also go into the other East African countries. But then now you find the regulatory framework within Kenya would be different from what you have in Uganda and also in Tanzania. And that also complicates the business with these forage products, so that it gets a little more expensive. Then if you operate within jurisdictions like, countries like Kenya, then you will, for example, find that the taxes, the kind of taxes that are levied on the forage seed are sometimes, many times also contributing to increased cost of the seed, which would then also kind of discourage some farmers from taking up the seed because they consider now the seed is expensive, but it's to do with also the kind of taxation that is put on it. Then in the last year, we have had the challenge.
Yes, you can make one more point, and then I'd like to move to the next panelist. Go ahead.
Okay. In the last year, we have had the challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic that has restricted our interaction with our potential customers, so that we are not able to really have the face-to-face type of interaction to influence farmers to consider taking up the products. So we have had to readjust to some other ways. Otherwise, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Charles. Our next panelist is Michael Peters. Michael, go ahead.
Yes, I think I would start with a bit of mention that forages are part of a system. meaning not only forages, but usually what you have in all the system in Eastern Africa, a lot are crop, livestock, tree systems. So I think what we could also discuss later in the conference, that we are not talking really of completely separate systems, that they are going hand in hand. And then the other comments, the two comments in general I want to make is on the food systems. We have to be aware that forages being used as a feed for livestock, and livestock or animal source foods are among the most nutrient dense foods which exist, and they are likely also amongst the most accessible. So I think we need to look more closely into animal source foods. The other thing what we have with forages, they also fulfill systems functions, and they could work on spatially or temporally more marginal environments and contribute to mitigation of climate change, soil fertility, biodiversity, etc. But coming back now to the issue at hand about forages and forage seed, which includes vegetative material in Eastern Africa. And I think if anybody has watched the presentation of IFDC this morning, is the same issue and actually very similar approaches what we are using. It's all about availability, affordability, and accessibility of planting material. Quality and trust is a big issue there. And comparing to what IFDC, I think, was potato and maize and beans, our approaches with awareness creation, creating demand, demonstration plots is very similar. And what we also see, while the current uptake seems to be limited, looking over the last 4 to 5 years, the demand for seeds has tripled or quadrupled at least. So you see a rising demand coming up, which I attribute quite a lot to intensification of systems. And that is also the reason why focusing on dairy and I would say also a bit more intensive beef systems. And because for investing in feeding your animals, you need to have a market pull. And I think that's the key why it is now getting of more interest. And what you see also among the systems is a bit difficult to, if you have a general view about a representative sample where adoption is taking place, because normally what we see is going through clusters. So if you start in one place, then it goes by word by mouth to another place. We will see how the radio messages and the television programs will change that. And so I think we see demand not only in Kenya, but also Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Madagascar coming up. And so we are working depending where we are with NGOs, development projects, private sector. We always have a combination of formal and informal sectors, again, depending on the type of forages. So forage grasses is often coming now through the formal sector, but legumes are following behind. And if we look at other places, there is also a succession of different types of forages and grasses because of their easy establishment and high biomass are often the first ones adopted. And once you build trust, then legumes and also trees, forage trees are coming in. So basically that's all what I have to say. I think the future for forages in Eastern Africa and also the rest of sub-Saharan Africa looks highly promising. And that you see also by by the interest not only of the NAS, but also development projects, NGOs, and last but not least, important private sector partners like Charles from Advantage Seeds. But there are also other companies partner here, Barenbrück, if I pronounce it correctly, Tropical Seeds, and other companies coming in. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that broad overview of the different elements that are linked to promoting the seed sector for forages and the opportunities for forages. I fully agree with you that we should look at it from a broader system perspective, and not only the role as an input to the dairy or the beef sector, but also the role of forages in terms of the farming system and in terms of climate change mitigation, and maybe even reducing greenhouse gases, because some of the research shows that if you intensify your dairy system and you increase the quality of the feed, then cows produce less methane gas, and so you get less methane per liter of milk or a kilo of beef produced, and that can also contribute to a more sustainable intensified system. Thank you very much, Michael. I've only seen one question directly related to the interventions in the session, and that is a question about the radio programs. Deepak Sapkota tells us that I think the radio program should be a cost-effective means over others. However, it looks not so. And how could the private seed company assure demand just attending a field day? So first, I think I want to pass that question to Mona, who can talk maybe a little bit about what we expect in terms of knowledge, attitudes, and practices. And then maybe we can link after that to Charles, and he can talk about how he feels he can link up to these promotional activities. Mona, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak, for your question. I think it's a valid point. Yes, radio programs are seemingly cost effective. I would just maybe use the word efficient. Yes, you can reach, the outreach is much higher. As you saw, we have been able to cover 500,000 or even 800,000 farmers in Kenya. So in terms of number of farmers reached, yes, it's got cost efficient, but effectiveness would be if those farmers adopted improved forage seeds. And that maybe comes only when there is a chance for them to interact and learn. So that is yet to be seen. And there we see the other channels being a bit more effective in terms of how to get farmers to actually first uptake and then adopt these improved varieties. And yes, if there are people selling seeds or the seed is available, then the likelihood of them adopting would be higher. And therefore, the need for private companies or any seed businesses for that matter to be around in order to supply the seed at the right time. But maybe Charles can add some more here. Charles?
Thank you, Mona. Charles, can you respond to that element of your connection to the promotion activities?
Yes, thank you very much. The promotional activities, particularly the radio programs, are very useful for us because, as Mona has mentioned, we ride on the publicity the products get out of the radio program that is broadcast within that particular region or that area. And so once that has taken place and we have the right linkages with the group I mentioned as agro dealers, the seed sellers who are stocking our products, then the farmers can easily go within their locations to get to these agro dealers to get the seed. So yes, I think it's a very good linkage for us.
Okay, thank you very much, Charles. I had a bit of a question myself, and this is more for Ben. when we looked at the presentation you gave and the sources of seed, the material that farmers are accessing, we see that there's a lot of non-seed sources, the splits, vegetative elements of the plants that are being handed on over from farmer to farmer and then being used as planting material to start your own forage crop. Ben, what do you think? Is there an opportunity for local seed businesses related to these vegetatively multiplied elements, or is this really so informal that there's hardly any money to be made? What is your view on that?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. First of all, what drives farmers to plant forages in villages is the interaction between the farmers, or if there is an opportunity, like Mona says, for a field day where new improved varieties are displayed and shown. One of the experiences we have gained is that farmers can easily adopt a grass once they see it and once they see the way it is performing. So those demonstrations are really important in terms of getting farmers to adopt. But coming back to your questions, the potential for the local seed businesses for vegetative seed. Indeed, there is a potential for exchange of planting materials at a cost within communities. One, because farmers spend money establishing their forage plots, and they are keen to share those forage plots with the rest of the farmers. The business sense of it is already happening in Kenya, where some farmers are actually selling the splits to neighbors or other farmers. So that those opportunities are there. The only disadvantage and limit I see is that when the supply is higher than the demand, then the incentive to pay for those materials disappear. But I believe that is an area that can be cultivated amongst the farmers and grown. So that potential could certainly be there. But let me comment a little bit on the potential for informal seed trading amongst farmers. That is what is common amongst the farmers. Farmers produce seed. They are aware that the quality standards of that seed it's not up to standard, but because they cannot easily access high quality forage seed through formal systems, then they resort to buying seed from the informal seed sector, either through community-based organizations or fellow farmers, or from other research institutions that could be holding that seed. So that potential is there. It needs to be identified and nurtured for it to grow. Over to you, Tom.
Yes, thank you very much, Ben. Indeed, it seems that there is some opportunity there. And when we implement our promotional activities, we are also thinking of that informal system. We have planned with our national partner a strategy to distribute at least the sources of the seed through that farmer field school setting that we are implementing. We're not sure whether that will actually create businesses, but at least it will help set off the process of adoption and encourage farmers to use these improved varieties. I see one other question from the audience here. That is a question from Greta van der Brand from NWO, from our donor, who says, is there any way to get to know more about the effectiveness of the radio program? And so I'd like to ask Mona if you can respond a bit to that, related to this multi-channel communication strategy that we have. How are we going to measure the effect?
Well, we are actually using the farmers covered through the radio program as our control group, because they have been reached and we have tried to generate interest. That's basically what a radio program would do. Otherwise, it's very difficult to attribute more to the radio program. If the same farmers come to a field day, then the likelihood of them adopting improved varieties is higher, because now they are converting their interest into something more action oriented, that they're seeking information more specific to which varieties are suitable, where can I get the seed, how much land do I need, and how much yield will it give, and so on. So if the same farmers come to the field day, then they would be the farmers we would follow up with in terms of, has the field day in conjunction with the radio program added to their knowledge? Has their attitude changed, and are they going to really take it up? And then, of course, the farmer field school, which is the more intensive one-on-one kind of training program, where they will actually go through a season of planting fodders. So yeah, it's not easy to isolate the radio and check its effectiveness in isolation, because it's very difficult to attribute anything to radio. It's something that has a very limited purpose in that sense. So, but I think it would have created awareness, that's for sure. I hope I answered the question to some extent.
Yes, I think you did quite well. I think we just need to stress that we are going to follow up with focus group discussions, trying to identify what farmers are really interested in, what kind of practices and what varieties they are looking for. So yes, we hope to get some results related to this communication strategy. All right, I think we're almost at the end of our session. Maybe we can do a little round of the panelists to make their final remarks very briefly. Let me start with Michael.
Yes, I think there's another question in the chat on working on the consumption side, and I think there is quite a demand for a nutritious food, which animal source foods are. And if you compare, for example, the Netherlands and most of sub-Saharan Africa, while the health ministry, I think in the Netherlands, is trying to curtail consumption of animal source food to 70 to 100 grams a day, the current average in sub-Saharan Africa is 30 grams. And also this livestock or animal source food can be grown in many areas where a lot of the other nutritious foods is not possible. So that would be my final mark. And that comes back, actually, there is a demand pull, and that's the demand pull is first through dairy and more intensive systems. And then the only other comment would be, no, let me leave that because others want to talk.
Thank you, Michael. I think the link to consumption, nutrition, and the food system as a whole is very relevant. Thank you for making that point. We have very little time. I think we have 2 more minutes. So I'd like to ask Charles if he could make his last point, and then we thank the participants and the audience. Charles?
Thank you very much. In conclusion, I would like to say that there is potential to improve productivity through these improved forage varieties that this group of partners have been working on. And there is a challenge before us to actually make the potential beneficiaries of these forages to be aware about them by adopting multiple ways by which they get the information, they learn about them, and eventually make decisions to take them up. And then we have to couple that with availing the seed, the planting material within their vicinities so that they are able to take it up and use it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charles. We have 1 more minute. Ben, would you like to say something, or should I close the session with some last remarks?
Yes, Tom, I'd like to just comment on the issue of forage seed. It's clear that the demand for forage seed is low, particularly in the countries we are working. If we have to make a big impact on promoting improved forages, we will have to put more effort in working on the demand side of things. And coupled with that, working on the forage seed delivery systems so that companies such as the Advantage Seed, who is here, can be able to acquire improved seeds and ensure it gets to the farmers in a timely manner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. I think we've finished our time. So just to conclude, I think we can harness the power of forages if we make sure that farmers are aware of the seed and the quality of that seed and the importance of improved forage varieties to increase production, animal production. And I think that demand side is well taken care of. There's a big and increasing demand for animal source products, and of course this will also improve nutrition for populations in East Africa. So thank you very much for attending this session. Thank you, Mona, Michael, Ben, Charles, and Arnab for organizing, and we'll see you back in another session. Goodbye.
Yeah, thank you. And the link for the next session, if anyone wants to go to the 1CGR session, is there in the chat. And I'll give you a moment so that you can copy it, because once I close this session, you will not get it. So see you in that session, whoever is interested to joining that session in our GSST Africa International Conference. So you can copy it and click that link to join another Zoom webinar session. So thank you very much. Thank you, Tom, Mona.
Thank you. Thanks.
Ben, Charles, Michael, thank you very much. Thank you.